Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Robbie Rhino, and in today's video I have two replays for you in the M60A1 Rise. So this is a Western Alliance Premium Era 2 medium tank, and it's been out for quite some time inside the Cold War game mode. This was one of my first ever Cold War premium tanks, especially Era 2 premium tanks, and it's definitely one of my favourites. I picked it up again to try and get the third mark in this vehicle. Haven't quite achieved that yet, but I had these two fantastic games and I thought it's a great chance to show off what this vehicle is all about. So if you've played the M48 pattern inside the World War II game mode, you'll essentially know what this tank is all about. It's got a little bit of turret armor, but the main focus is on the very good gun, and it's a 105mm single fire gun. Great accuracy, very nice DPM, pretty reasonable standard penetration, and it's just a very nice all-round vehicle that should give you a nice lot of silver inside the Cold War game mode. If you're wondering about its silver bonus, it's a very juicy 65%, 10% tank XP bonus, and a 10% command XP bonus. So I believe this is available in a bundle in the store at the moment, but I'm sure it'll be available as a single purchase tank at some point in the future. So if you like the look of this vehicle, I highly recommend it, especially if you like your single fire guns. You don't want to faff around with the multiple weapon system, you're not too fussed on ATGMs or secondary weapons, and you'll just want to focus on a very decent main primary gun that has good penetration, is going to make a lot of silver, and has a little bit of armor to keep you in the battle. So we're going to start off talking a little bit about the M60A1 Rise. I'll talk to you about a few of its stats. I'll show you my commander and equipment setup and how that's affected the stats, and then we'll get talking about these two gameplays. The first of which, as you can see in the background, is here on a standard battle on Karelia, and we have come to the G7 location, went down the 9-0 line to start with, made a pretty aggressive push, and we're going to try and put this fantastic accuracy and DPM to work, hopefully in mid to long ranges, but also trying to support our heavy tank down in J6, J7 on that corner where the heavies like to battle it out. We do have to be a little bit careful of the true vision system up on that hill. This can be a very dangerous map for big chunky medium or heavy tanks like this tank, so if you get spotted on that hill you can be taken out of the game very quickly indeed. So let's talk a little bit about this tank. The Era 2 M60A1 Rise, 2,750 hit points, so pretty healthy for a medium tank. Plenty of hit points to take between sort of 3 and 5 shots per battle, and you do have a little bit of armor, and I'll talk you through a little bit about that in just a little bit. You also have 505 meters view range, which is decent enough, and you can push that out, or push that up I should say, depending on what commander and equipment setup you wish to run on this vehicle. In terms of its mobility, it has pretty decent out-of-the-box mobility, 1,200 horsepower engine, so a very substantial engine indeed, and that's because you have lots of composite and explosive reactive armor attached to this tank in the Cold War game mode. That gives it a bit of extra weight, so you need that pretty healthy engine to push it up hills. You have a 24.65 power to weight ratio, 67.6 kilometers an hour forwards, 32 kilometers an hour in reverse, which is very nice indeed. Your hull traverse is 38 degrees a second, which is very nice, and your turret traverse is 34 degrees a second, so not brilliant, but with gun handling skills you definitely will increase that number and get it to a very nice level. In terms of this 105mm gun, it's a fantastic gun. It has 421mm of penetration on its standard APF SDS rounds for 480 alpha damage. If you choose to fire the premium on this vehicle, which is heat, your alpha damage goes from 480 to 460, and your pen only increases by 9 to 430mm, so I highly recommend firing pretty much exclusively APF SDS, as heat is notoriously difficult to use inside the Cold War game mode, especially eras 2 and 3. And the third round on the M60A1 Rise is HE with 250mm of penetration and 590 alpha damage. So that's it for the first gameplay there on Karelia, where we finished with a pretty nice total of 6.9k direct damage, 1.5k assistance, top of our team, with a nice profit with or without a premium account and 3 kills. So we're going to carry on talking about the Rise in the next gameplay, which is a little longer, and then we'll get talking about how I like to play this vehicle. So I'll see you over in the second gameplay shortly. So we are now into the second gameplay of today's video, and we are here on Raseiniai in the M60A1 Rise. This one is a little bit of a longer battle, so I hope you stick through to the end as it does go down to the wire. And we will continue now talking about the remaining stats of this vehicle. Then I'll get talking about the commander and equipment setup and talk about how I like to play this vehicle and why I like it so much. So in the last gameplay, we talked about the hit points, view range, and the mobility. We talked a little bit about the gun, but now we're going to continue with the rest of the stats of this fantastic 105mm gun. So we discussed that it fires APF SDS as standard, heat as its secondary ammunition selection, and HE as its third ammunition choice. I'll tell you now the shell velocities of all three of these rounds. So 1508 meters a second on the standard APF SDS rounds, fantastic for sniping at mid to long ranges. Your shell velocity drops to 1173 meters a second for those heat rounds, and apart from your alpha damage reducing by 20 compared to your standard rounds, that shell velocity can deter quite a lot of players. It's not too bad to use, but heat is notoriously difficult at penetrating tanks in Era 2 and Era 3 due to the fact that it doesn't go through the spaced or the explosive reactive or composite armor, so definitely bear that in mind. And if you want to fire those HE rounds, 736 meters a second, so they're best at mid to close ranges against lightly armored targets. In terms of the gun depression, 9 degrees, which is very flexible on many different ridge lines in the game, and 19 degrees of gun elevation can be useful. In terms of its DPM, you have an 8.2 second reload, which means that it has a 3514 DPM, so a very nice DPM indeed for a single fire gun. In terms of the gun handling, 1.9 second aim time, which is phenomenal, and a 0.31 accuracy, which doesn't sound fantastic, but if you do use all of the gun handling skills on your commander, you will get that down to a very impressive level indeed. So in terms of its DPM, it has the 4th highest DPM out of 28 medium tanks in Era 2, and it's the 3rd best DPM on a premium tank. The first is the Ignis Purgatio, which is obviously the Warhammer recent release, but that does have a 90mm gun with pretty poor penetration, so definitely bear that in mind. So this does have a very nice DPM indeed. Why else do I like this vehicle? Well, it does have some pretty useful spaced armor, some 6mm sections and some 20mm sections, and I'll put screenshots up on the screen now for you to show you that. It protects against ATGM, HE and heat ammunition, and it can surprise your opponents. You do have a very weak cupola, and your hull isn't fantastic, but it's just enough to occasionally ricochet shells due to the boat-shaped nature of the tank. Just bear in mind it has poor side armor, and it doesn't side scrape well, even against smaller caliber rounds, so definitely bear that in mind. But that spaced armor can definitely help protect you in many different scenarios. So what commander and equipment setup do I run on the M60A1 Rise? Well, in terms of my equipment, I run advanced loader, improved ventilation and traction system. And in terms of my commander skills, Sixth Sense, Born Leader, Rapid Loading, Steady Aim, Rapid Aim, Snapshot, Run and Gun, Armor Angling, and Track Mechanic. It's a commander that I run on many different heavy and medium tanks, hence the Armor Angling, but you could take that out for something like off-road driving to improve the mobility even more, or another skill of your choosing. But if you choose to run that exact same setup, I'll tell you how that affects the stats. It boosts your view range to 559 meters. You can now go 74 kilometers an hour forwards, 35 kilometers an hour in reverse. Your hull traverse would have improved to 41.8 degrees a second, and your turret traverse has improved dramatically to 42.36 degrees a second. In terms of your gun handling, 1.9 second aim time has been reduced to 1.72 seconds, and that 0.31 accuracy reduced to 0.24. In terms of the DPM, it will have increased to 4,939, meaning that it's a fantastic gun for trading multiple rounds into your opponents for every one that they fire into you, especially tanks that have a higher caliber gun with less DPM. And as you have such a good DPM, you definitely want to make the most of it, and you definitely can with the very nice standard penetration, the fantastic aim time, and the great accuracy if you choose to run a setup that is similar to mine that is focused on gun handling and DPM. As you can see that I run the the combat rations, I should say, which further improves the performance of this vehicle, but in particular the gun handling and DPM. You could take that out for the enhanced smokescreen if you want to sacrifice a little bit of DPM for a little bit of extra concealment and safety for those scenarios when you just want to get out of engagements. But with this vehicle, you want to try and keep your gun firing, find positions on ridgelines to use that 9 degrees of gun depression, and you want to put as many rounds into your opponent as quickly as possible. You have a pretty healthy slug of those hit points, 2,750, so definitely make the most of them. You're not always going to bounce rounds, but you do occasionally absorb those ATGMs and those HE and heat rounds, and that can keep you in the game for as long as possible. And once this gun is firing, you do rack up the damage very quickly. In the particular gameplay in the background here on Raseiniai, we have picked up 1,520 assistance, but also 5.6k direct damage in the first sort of 5 minutes of this battle, showing you that if you find a position like here in the castle area and you can play that kind of mid-range, long-range sniping role, as long as you do have targets, you can be laughing with this vehicle. And with that 65% silver bonus, you'll make a pretty penny in terms of your economy. So we are down by 2 tanks. I'm going to have to try and push the tempo a little bit here. I'm going to go and help out my heavy tank, push forward and try and put this gun to work. Looks like our job is cut out for us here on Raseiniai. We're going to have to do everything in our power to try and take this one down. And what you want to be doing in this vehicle in this kind of scenario is just utilizing that DPM. As you can see here, with the improved mobility, we managed to get around without taking a shot from that M60A1, and we have the DPM advantage, and you do have over many different vehicles in Era 2, especially a lot of the medium tanks. As I've already mentioned, this has the 4th best DPM out of 28 medium tanks in Era 2, so you want to make the most of this gun. Don't be afraid to take a shot, because you can put multiple into your enemies. And here against this Stingray, we are going to be chasing him. We prioritise the T55 Enigma first because it's a one-shot tank, and then we try and use this dead wreck to try and hide our armour as best as possible. Whenever we feel like an enemy is trying to fire at us, we are always trying to wiggle and angle our hull, trying to find one of those auto ricochet angles. And if someone's coming at you with an ATGM like a light tank, you want to wiggle, try and get people to bait them and to shoot them into the front of your turret or to the composite armor, which is located over your hull and a little bit across your side, and you just got to pray that it gets absorbed. It's not reliable, but it's enough to keep you in the game, and it does make this a pretty solid all-round performer. So here on Raseiniai, unfortunately, we are now in a 1 versus 4. We've picked up 10k damage already, and there's still 7 minutes of this battle left to go. In a scenario like this, you want to take out tanks as quickly as possible because you don't want to let them all gang up and strategize and put you in a corner and all come at you at once. So when you find a target, you have to try and take it out as quickly as possible. I've chosen to try and take the higher ground here in the castle and see if we can get some shots off at any tanks that we see in the open field. and I'm always scanning the horizon in a scenario like this just for any glimpse of tanks that might be coming my way. I'm going to try and find a better defensive location where I can protect more of my hull and use the 9 degrees of gun depression. So we're going to come over here to the K line and see if we can go up on this ridge here and use our gun depression to try and get shots at anyone who are coming through the open field. Unfortunately, not quite enough gun depression there for that particular location, and we do get spotted as we poke the bottom of this hill. There's this AMX 30B2 Farad, who is a one-shot, so I'm going to have to advance and just hope that no one else comes in the meantime. Unfortunately for us, an M103A2 who is full health is trundling over, so we're going to have to use the hardcover of this rock and try and get the killing shot on this 30B2 Farad. We do miss our first shot, he puts one into us, and we are now in a very bad situation. We're going to pre-aim for the 30B2 Farad who comes around the corner. I somehow missed that shot, I must have flinched at the wrong moment. We're going to rush forward, put one into the 30B2 Farad, and now we're just relying on our DPM on the M60A1 Rise. We put another one into that M1A3A2 there. We're going to try and track him in place there, hoping that he wasn't able to depress his gun, but unfortunately for us, it was just too many hit points left on the enemy team for us to take that one down. But even in a loss, we finish there in the 3rd place with 7 kills, a very nice profit, and we pick up 12k direct damage, 1520 assistance, 1152 base XP in a loss, showing you that once this gun does get singing, you can dish out a lot of damage. You have to be willing to take the occasional shot, but you have that spaced armor or composite explosive reactive armor to protect you against ATGMs, and that can occasionally save you in the game. Apart from that, you have to try and make your hull as well angled as possible. Try and expose as little as your hull, use your gun depression, go on ridge lines and support your heavy tanks and put your DPM to work. Don't be afraid to take a shot. You have enough hit points to take a few in a battle, and you definitely can take them with you into the next game. But I hope you enjoyed watching those 2 gameplays and this little showcase of the M60A1 Rise. Let me know what you think of this vehicle in the comments below, and if you like this video, please consider giving it a like down below. It will really help the channel out, and until next time, I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.